Run by the TUC, UNISON and all the public sector and indeed unions that represent people in the private sector under the auspices of the Public Services Alliance is engaging with young people. We're going out into the universities and the colleges, talking to the students who are campaigning against tuition fees, who've been involved in occupations, making sure that we're building a really broad alliance. Another worker who's faced in cuts and another key area in the revenue and benefits section of the City Council. Revenues and benefits where they collect council tax and they pay housing benefits. Despite being one of the highest performing services in the country in terms of that particular service, having delivered millions of pounds of savings following reorganisation and the commitment of the workforce over the past few years, the revenues and benefits service in the City Council faces cuts of up to a third. 34 jobs to go. Putting people... She's not here yet. Wow, that's a hell of an introduction. She's not here yet. All right. Sorry.
It's all right.
It's a management ploy. She's having to work late. Sorry about that.
She'll speak later.
She will be speaking later, I promise you. Okay. Another area, 50% of the council spending goes into the adult services arena, and demand for those services we all know is going to increase with the ageing population. It is inevitable that that area is going to be subject to cuts, and we've recently seen proposals for major changes in the way that service is delivered, and in particular the closure of facilities. I'm trusting Simon Milligan is here. Simon is one of the UNISON representatives who works in adult services and will be saying a few words.
Hi, it's Milligan. Thanks for coming. I want to say a few words. The first thing I want to say is it's clear to me that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer in 2011.
Yeah.
I think it's obscene that we're standing here today worrying about council services, worrying about jobs, worrying about the future of our young and the care of our older people, when bankers are potentially going to trouser £7 billion in bonuses. What sort of society are we living in today?
That's one the day just getting $2 million. I know.
I'm privileged to manage a resource centre for older people in Newcastle upon Tyne. I'm privileged to work with the team that have delivered excellence. I'm proud to be a UNISON rep. One of the things that we need to do is to recognise that public services are under attack, and that the closure of a service in the East End will affect the people of the East End. Somebody said to me on Monday at the branch committee, it's all very well being against something. What are you for? I'm not particularly against the closure of Churton Resource Centre. What I'm against is the removal of older people's services from the East End of the city. That's what I'm against. What they're saying, in the documents that have been published, what they're saying is Newcastle's a small city. What I say to you is this: Newcastle's a small city if you're relatively well off and you can afford a taxi fare to the north and the west from Walker and Byker and Heaton that's going to cost you 25 quid. Newcastle's not a small city if you've got to get 2 buses when you're in your 70s and 80s to visit your nearest and dearest in a resource centre. Are we really saying in 2011 that that's the best we can do for the citizens of Newcastle upon Tyne? I think there's a better way than that. One of the ironies of being me is that I manage a team that actually achieved excellence, and we did that as a group of staff. We're threatened, there's 32 jobs going to go in our particular service, looking after older people. There's 37 jobs at risk, dealing with people with disabilities in the west of the city. These are being called efficiencies, and I really think we need to challenge that sort of language. It's not an efficiency. Somebody losing their job's not an efficiency, it's a job cut. It's been sentenced to unemployment. It's not an efficiency. Behind frontline services are people like finance, and I have to say, finance are under attack as well. And it's very interesting that some of the most passionate people in actually providing direct services to vulnerable people in Newcastle actually work in finances, because they get it. They get what it means to actually put the money into places to make sure that things happen for people. We couldn't be anything working in direct services without revs and benefits, without city services, without facility services. There's nobody in the city council anymore that's got a soft job, as far as I can tell. For the last 20 years that I've been employed, all we've done is adapt to change. All we've done is deliver services. I don't recall us getting any bonuses, mind. Sometimes we get tins of biscuits from people and we share them out. There's a lot of talk in the City Council at the moment about leadership, and we're all in this together. And, you know, at the risk of offending people, I have to say that maybe it is the end of an era if we're spending £40,000 on a new car for the Lord Mayor. I think that's appalling when people's jobs are at risk, and more importantly, people's services are at risk. And there's also the debacle about the Chief Executive apparently getting an extra £5,000.
Oh, I know he did.
Leadership is actually doing the right thing sometimes. I remembered what else I wanted to say about public service. I'm passionate about public service, passionate about working with people. I think we all are working where we do. We all in the City Council make a difference to people's lives. You know, there's nothing wrong with being a public sector worker, you know. Cameron and Clegg might have you think otherwise. You guys are not to blame for the problems of this country. Yeah? And while we're on about the recession, I don't actually know of too many economists, or certainly the ones that I like, that say you can cut your way out of a recession. I think what you need to do is actually grow public services in order to stimulate the private sector. I think the indication of all the people here today is that we're not going to take this line down. And I think to people who might be worried about how it affects them, you might be worried about your job, you might be worried about, oh, what does it mean today, coming out here and speaking, or coming out here and showing support for your fellow City Council employees and trade unionists. Well, I tell you this, the only way that your interests can be served is by standing together now, and by standing together in the future, because it's the only way that we can protect services, and it's the only way we can protect your conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. And Simon raises quite an important point here, because we do not apologise. Our campaign is about defending services, but it's also about defending jobs. Not just because the local economy depends on those jobs, because every council worker, in fact every public sector worker, is committed to the job they do, committed to the families and communities in this city. And it's a disgrace when people start talking as though we were all earning vast amounts of money, as though we got massive gold-plated pensions. And that brings me to the issue of the redundancy situation. Avoiding compulsory redundancies is not just a slogan. People who are able to accept voluntary severance can do so because financially they can afford it. Those who don't accept voluntary severance do so because financially they can't afford it and they're committed to the job as well. And let's remember, more than 50% of our members working in Newcastle earn less than £18,000 a year. The average pension for a woman council worker is £2,500. We're now faced with a situation in negotiations recently with the Chief Exec about the the redundancy package. We understand the blame rests with the government because they will not allow the council to what we call capitalise, to borrow the money to meet the costs of redundancy. Every redundancy is an additional financial cost to the council. With 800 redundancies, the council estimates it would have to find up to another £14 million on the current redundancy scheme. It becomes cannibalism. We sack workers and then we sack more workers to meet the costs of sacking them workers. But the council does have choices. And at the minute, some officers are advising the council to cut the redundancy package that's available, that would reduce the money that's available to workers, which will reduce the number of volunteers. Some officers have said as well that if you want to accept voluntary redundancy, you should waive your notice period and go on 4 weeks instead of the 12 weeks that you're entitled to. If you're earning £25,000 a year, you're 55 years old, you've worked for the council for 15 years, on the current scheme you'd go out with £21,000 and you'd get your 12 weeks in notice. If them proposals go through, you would lose nearly 30% off that type of payment. That's the type of money we're talking about. And the redundancy is simply a buffer. It helps people adjust to that period of unemployment. And the majority of us know, if we're made redundant, there are not jobs out there for us to go to. They're just not there. And most people's redundancy is not even a year's salary. So it is a serious situation we now face. And as we've said, we've had meetings, negotiations. Yesterday we met with the Chief Exec and the Leader of the Council. We're hoping to get a satisfactory outcome. Yes, it'll cost more, but the cost of the goodwill from the workforce, the cost of being able to get volunteers and get them out quite quickly so we can get the full year's savings will save the council money as well, and that needs to be taken into account. And that is one of our core concerns. I'm pleased to say that we have the political leadership of the authority here, from the Labour group and the council. I'm going to ask them to speak because they need to get back in for the full council meeting. But David Faulkner, the Leader of the Council, has come and he will now address us. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Hello, everybody. When I heard that the rally was on and there was an opportunity to come and speak, I wanted to say that I would do so.